The Western Philosophy, Chapter 6, Section 3, The Critic of Pure Reason, page 279 to 288. What is meant by this title, Critic, is not precisely a criticism, but a critical analysis. Kant is not attacking pure reason except at the end to show its limitations. Rather, he hopes to show its possibility and to exalt it above the impure knowledge which comes to us through the distorting channels of sense. For pure reason is to mean knowledge that does not come through our senses, but is independent of all sense experience. Knowledge belonging to us by the inherent nature and the structure of the mind. At the very outset, then Kant flings down a challenge to Locke and the English school. Knowledge is not all deserved from the senses. Human thought. He had shown that there is no soul and no science, that our minds are but our ideas, impressions, and associations, and our certainties but probabilities in perpetual danger of violation. These false conclusions, says Kant, are the result of false premises. You assume that all knowledge comes from separate and distinct sensations. Naturally, these cannot give you necessity or invariable sequences of which you may forever certain, and naturally you must not expect to see your soul, even with the eyes of the internal sense. Let us grant that absolute certainty of knowledge is impossible if all knowledge comes from sensation, from an independent external world which owes us no promise of regularity of behavior. But what if we have knowledge that is independent of sense experience, knowledge whose truth is certain to us even before experience, a priori? Then absolute truth and absolute science would become possible, would it not? Is there such absolute knowledge? This is the problem of the first critic. My question is, what we can hope to achieve with reason, when all the material and assistance of experience are taken away? The critic becomes a detailed biology of thought, an examination of the origin and the evolution of concepts, an analysis of the inherited structure of the mind. This, as Kant believes, is the entire problem of metaphysics. In this book, I have chiefly aimed at completeness, and I venture to maintain that there ought not to be one single metaphysical problem that has not been solved here, or to the solution of which the key at least has not here been supplied. Exegete momentum error perennius. With such egoism, nature spurs us on to creation. The critic comes to the point at once. Experience is by no means the only field to which our understanding can be confined. Experience tells us what is, but not that it must be necessarily what it is, and not otherwise. It, therefore, never gives us any really general truths, and our reason, which is particularly anxious for that class of knowledge, is roused by it rather than satisfied. General truths, which at the same time bear the character of an inward necessity, must be independent of experience, clear and certain in themselves. That is to say, they must be true no matter what our later experience may be, true even before experience, true a priori. How far we can advance independently of all experience in the priori knowledge is shown by the brilliant example of mathematics. Mathematical knowledge is necessary and certain. We cannot conceive of future experience violating it. We may believe that the sun will rise in the west tomorrow, or that some day in some conceivable asbestos world, fire will not burn stick. But we cannot for the life of us believe that 2 times 2 will never make anything else than 4. Such truths are true before experience. They do not depend on experience past, present, or to come. Therefore, they are absolute and necessary truths. It is inconceivable that they should ever become untrue. But whence do we get this character of absoluteness and necessity? Not from experience, for experience gives us nothing but separate sensations and events, which may alter their sequence in the future. These truths derive their necessary character from the inherent structure of our minds, from the natural and inevitable manner in which our minds must operate. For the mind of man, and here at last is the great thesis of Kant, is not passive wax upon which experience and sensation write their absolute and yet whimsical word, nor is it a mere abstract name for the series or group of mental states It is an active organ which molds and coordinates sensations into ideas, an organ which transforms the chaotic multiplicity of experience into the ordered unity of thought. But how? First, transcendental aesthetic. The effort to answer this question, to study the inherent structure of the mind or the innate laws of thought, is what Kant called transcendental philosophy, because it is a problem transcending sense experience. I call knowledge transcendental, which is occupied not so much with objects as with our a priori concepts of objects, with our modes of correlating our experience into knowledge. There are two grades of stages in this process of working up the raw material of sensation into the finished product of thought. The first stage is the coordination of sensations by applying to them the forms of perceptions, pace, and the times. The second stage is the coordination of the perceptions so developed by applying to them the forms of conceptions, the categories of thought. Kant, using the word aesthetic in its original and etymological sense, as connoting sensation or feeling, calls the study of the first of these stages transcendental aesthetic, and using the word logic as meaning the science of the forms of thought. He calls the study of the second stage transcendental logic. These are terrible words which will take meaning as the argument proceeds. Once over this hill, the road to Kant will be comparatively clear. Now, just what is meant by sensations and perceptions, and how does the mind change the former into the latter? By itself, a sensation is merely the awareness of a stimulus. We have a taste on the tongue, an odor in the nostrils, a sound in the ears, a temperature on the skin, a flash of light on the retina, a pressure on the fingers. It is the raw, crude beginning of experience. It is what the infant has in the early days of its groping mental life. It is not yet knowledge, but let these various early days of its groping mental life. It is not knowledge, but let these various sensations group themselves about an object in space and time. Say this apple, let the odor in the nostrils and the taste on the tongue, the light on the retina, the shape revealing pressure on the fingers and the hand, unite and group themselves. About this thing. And there is now an awareness not so much of stimulus as of a specific object. There is a perception. Sensation has passed into knowledge. But again, was this passage, this grouping, automatic? Did the sensations of themselves spontaneously and naturally fall into a cluster and an order, and so become perception? Yes, said Locke and Hume. Not at all, says Kant. For these varied sensations come to us through varied channels of sense, through 1,000 afferent nerves that pass from skin and eye and ear and tongue into the brain. What a medley of messengers they must be as they crowd into the chambers of the mind, calling for attention. No wonder Plato spoke of the rabble of the senses, and left to themselves they remained rabbled, a chaotic manifold, pitifully impotent, waiting to be ordered into meaning and purpose and power. As readily might the messages through brought to a general from 1,000 sectors of the battle line weave themselves unaided into comprehension and command. No, there is a lawgiver for this mob, a directing and coordinating power that does not merely receive but takes these atoms of sensation and molds them into sense. Observe first that not all of the messages are accepted. Myriad forces play upon your body at this moment. A storm of stimuli beats down upon the nerve endings which, amoeba-like, you put forth to experience the external world. But not all that core are chosen. Only those sensations are selected that can be molded into perceptions suited to your present purpose, or that brings those imperious messages of danger which are always relevant. The clock is ticking, and you do not hear it, but that same ticking, not louder than before, will be heard at once if your purpose wills it so. The mother asleep at her infant's cradle is deaf to the turmoil of life about her, but let the little one move and the mother gropes her way back to waking attention, like a diver rising hurriedly to the surface of the sea. Let the purpose be addition, and the stimulus 2 and 3 brings the response. 5. Let the purpose be multiplication, and the same stimulus, the same auditory sensations 2 and 3 brings the response. 6. Association of sensations or ideas is not merely by contiguity in space or time, nor by similarity, nor recency, frequency, or intensity of experience. It is above all determined by the purpose of the mind. Sensations and thoughts are servants. They await our call. They do not come unless we need them. There is an agent of selection and direction that uses them and is their master. In addition to the sensations and the ideas, there is the mind. This agent of selection and coordination, Kant thinks, uses first of all two simple methods for the classification of the material presented to it: the sense of space and the sense of time. As the general arranges the messages brought him according to the place for which they come and the time at which they were written, and so finds the order and a system for them all, so the mind allocates its sensation in space and time, attributes them to this object here, or that object there, to this present time, or to that past. Space and time are not things perceived, but modes of perception, ways of putting sense into sensation. Space and time are organs of perception. They are a priori, because all ordered experience involves and presupposes them. Without them, sensations could never grow into perceptions. They are a priori because it is inconceivable that we should ever have any future experience that will not also involve them. And because they are a priori, their laws, which are the laws of mathematics, a priori absolute and necessary, world without end. It is not merely probable, it is certain that we shall never find a straight line that is not the shortest distance between 2 points. Mathematics, at least, is saved from the dissolvent skepticism of David Hume. Can all the sciences be similarly saved? Yes, if their basic principle, the law of causality, that a given cause must always be followed by a given effect, can be shown. like space and time, to be so inherent in all the processes of understanding that no future experience can be conceived that would violate or escape it. Is causality too a priori, an indispensable prerequisite and condition of all thought? The second, transcendental analytic. So we pass from the wide field of sensation and perception to the dark and the narrow chamber of thought, from transcendental aesthetic to transcendental logic, and first to the naming and analysis of those elements in our thought which are not so much given to the mind by perception as given to perception by the mind. Those levels which raise the perceptual knowledge of objects into the conceptual knowledge of relationships, sequences, and laws, those tools of the mind which refine experience into science. Just as perceptions arrange the sensations around objects in space and time, so conception arranges perceptions, objects, and events about the ideas of cause, unity, reciprocal relation, necessity, contingency, etc. These and other categories are the structure into which perceptions are received, and by which they are classified and molded into the ordered concepts of thought. These are the very essence and the character of the mind. Mind is the coordination of experience. And here again, observe the activity of this mind that was, to Locke and Hume, mere passive wax under the blows of sense experience. Consider a system of thought like Aristotle's. Is it conceivable that this almost cosmic ordering of data should have come by the automatic anarchistic spontaneity of the data themselves? See this magnificent card catalog in the library intelligently ordered into sequence by human purpose. Then picture all these card cases thrown upon the floor, all these cards scattered pell-mell into riotous disorder. Can you now conceive these scattered cards pulling themselves up, Murchison-like, from their disarray, passing quietly into their alphabetical and topical places in their proper boxes, and each box into its fit place in the rack, until all should be order and sense and purpose again? What a miracle story this skeptics have given us after all. Sensation is an organized stimulus. Perception is organized sensation. Conception is organized perception. Silence is organized knowledge. Wisdom is organized life. Each is a greater degree of order and sequence and unity. Whence this order, this sequence, this unity? Not from the things themselves, for they are knowledge to us only by sensations that come through 1,000 channels at once in disorderly multitude. It is our purpose that put order and sequence and unity upon this importunate lawlessness. It is ourselves, our personalities, our minds, that bring light upon these seas. Locke was wrong when he said, there is nothing in the intellect except what was first in the senses. Leibniz was right when he added, nothing except the intellect itself. Perceptions without conceptions, says Kant, are blind. If perceptions move themselves automatically into ordered thought, if mind were not an active effort hammering out order from chaos, how could the same experience leave one man mediocre and in a more active and tireless soul be raised to the light of wisdom and the beautiful logic of truth? The world, then, has order, not of itself, but because the thought that knows the world is itself an ordering, the first stage in that classification of experience, which at last is science and philosophy. The laws of thought are also the laws of things, for things are known to us only through this thought that must obey these laws, since it and they are one. In effect, as Hegel was to say, the laws of logic and the laws of nature are one, and logic and metaphysics merge. The generalized principles of science are necessary because they are ultimately laws of thought that are involved and presuppose in every experience, past, present, and to come. Science is absolute, and truth is everlasting. This section is over.